Bonsoir. Avant de passer la parole, comme il est d'usage, à l'enseignant à l'initiative de la conférence, Dominique Coulon, pour la présentation du conférencier, je voulais remercier en notre nom collectif Ben van Berkel pour sa présence ce soir et pour le fait qu'il ait accepté de nous consacrer de son temps précieux. Je voulais vous remercier pour votre présence nombreuse pour assurer le succès de cette conférence, ainsi que FR3 pour la mise à disposition de cet auditorium pour un cycle de 3 conférences en fait. Donc la première inaugurée ce soir avec l'agence UNStudio. Une autre conférence se tiendra le 28 mars dans ces locaux également avec l'agence Big de Rotterdam. De Copenhague, excusez-moi. Et enfin, nous accueillerons l'agence MRDV de Rotterdam sur une date qui reste à préciser. Donc vraiment, bienvenue à ce cycle de conférences. Et je passe la parole à Dominique Coulon.
Bonsoir, merci à Ben van Berkel d'être ici parmi nous. Je voudrais rappeler qu'il a été diplômé de la Rietveld Academy d'Amsterdam en 87, ainsi que de l'Architectural Association de Londres pour la même année. Ensuite, il a fondé en 1988 son agence avec Caroline Bos, et en 1998, il fonde une nouvelle agence qui s'appelle UNStudio, United Network Studio, c'est-à-dire ce qui signifie en fait un travail en réseau. Et donc on est très heureux ici de l'accueillir. Alors je change de feuille. Voilà. Alors UNStudio a été fondé en 1988. Le développement urbain, l'architecture et les projets d'infrastructure sont les champs d'action dans lesquels le bureau s'illustre rapidement. Mais ce qui me semble important de relever, et qui fait certainement la spécificité de la production de UNStudio, c'est le fait de développer une préoccupation forte pour la question du corps dans son rapport à l'espace. UNStudio fabrique des projets qui se forgent de façon dynamique à partir des flux. On leur connaît entre autres le pont Érasme à Rotterdam, la maison Möbius, le théâtre de Lelystad et bien entendu le musée Mercedes à Stuttgart. Au-delà de l'exemplarité de leur production, ce qui me semble très important, c'est de comprendre et d'appréhender leur démarche. Comment répondre dans le champ de l'urbanisme et de l'architecture à la complexité de la société contemporaine? À cette question, il me semble que UNStudio trouve des réponses en s'appuyant sur une approche pluridisciplinaire du projet et en développant des méthodes de conception adaptées à cette complexité. Alors évidemment, Monsieur Van Berkel, on est très heureux de vous accueillir ce soir. Il faut que vous sachiez que les étudiants travaillent sur vos projets. Il faut que vous sachiez aussi qu'à l'occasion de voyages d'études, on a visité vos bâtiments et donc on est très heureux de vous voir ce soir expliquer et présenter vos projets. Merci.
Thank you so much. I know it's not so common to give a talk here in English, but as you understand, as a Dutchman, having been lived so long in England, I only dream in English, and I speak a very little Dutch. So and for that reason, it's better not to talk in French. What I'm going to do tonight is to show you not particularly only the work of UNStudio alone. The reason why I do that is simply because I lately have learned that specifically among you, students mainly, and maybe also the profession, likes to maybe talk more about ideas and the way how we come to ideas within the profession. And particularly right now, as we know, it is a very strange phase where we are in with the profession. Maybe we are in a strange phase anyway, when we think about everything around us today, you know, from economics to our climate changes, etc. We are having to deal with changes in the external forces of the profession related to its internal regulations, and the way how we come to our architecture is something we have to constantly question. And for that reason, I'd like to talk tonight more about ideas, techniques, design techniques, methods of working, and how we come to cultural production, I'd like to argue maybe today. Not so much about that we build, but that we produce architectural stuff and cultural stuff. So I'd like to start with this first image of Manhattan. And the reason why I bring it up is simply because the beauty of Manhattan was always related to this idea of how the piers of Manhattan were connected to the grid, and the idea of how the goods were coming into the city, related to consumption, production, and even also high finance, how that all was connecting itself towards this grid is the beauty of Manhattan. And of course, you could say, yeah, today this whole grid doesn't work anymore as it used to be. Today these piers are not there anymore, and we know that if you are looking at an area where we have looked at ourselves, that is the Penn Station area and the Grand Central Station area, and then think about the connections between the city center and the relationship towards the river, then there are many problems today. I mean, many things who are now an obstacle in the city. Although maybe there is a wonderful garden and an area, a park around the river right now, and it's actually healing itself up since the industrial area. But still, for instance, when you think about the 100,000 people coming into Penn Station every day, and you, for instance, in the night you want to go to the Madison Square Garden, then it's boring when you come out of that building. It's not so lively. If you think of that in the relationship to the Grand Central Station, then this is a far more integral site with much more programs and much more activities around this site. But here, I'm not going to explain the way how we analyze this part of the city, as I promised. But I'd like to talk about how you can visualize information, how you can today structure information, and how can you rethink organizational principles. Like the organizational principle of Manhattan is a typical industrial, mechanical, organizational model, what is related to an history of architecture and urban planning, what we know already for a long time. We know how we can work with the grid. So what is essential is today, what are the type of organizations we can work with today? You know, what is it that, what does it say to us when we see this type of information, and what can we do to it in a way how we can restructure it and redefine it in order to make this site more interesting, for instance. Anyway, I mean, we have been for many years then activating ourselves towards the idea of the parametric, and everyone now today, although we are already working on this for maybe close to 10 years or even longer on the parametric design method, but what we have learned is that it is not so important to work only with the computer when it comes down to form making alone. And the parametric principles in design are not so fascinating there where it is related to just producing forms alone. That's what I'm saying. We are saying with UNStudio that if you look at the way how you bring information together, then it's the most important that you do that in a way whereby you make sure that the information is crossed and combined, and that you can suddenly discover things in a way how you combine information so that you make it more compact. Like, for instance, here on the side we were looking at the residents, the commuters, city, the tourists, of course the people who are really go to work on the location. How is it related to accessibility and publicness? how do people, all these user groups, how do they occupy the site in time? And not only, let's say, in time in the day, but also in a way from how they walk from one location to the other one, how much time does it use? Also, we looked at all these user groups in the relationship to their infrastructure. So what do they use for type of infrastructure? So here you could say that the way how information comes together is visualized, rethought, totally different than we used to bring information before together. So it's again not about form, but it is more about how do you inform a site? How do you inform the form? So this whole idea of the twist of the digital is not so, I would like to argue, is not so important again as we sometimes think. It's only a tool machine whereby you can see different layers of ideas who can be giving you new ideas for the way how you organize your projects. But then if you give it a twist, if you give it a different interpretation and a different quality of the way how you then use it in your architecture or in your urban planning is for us very important. Like this is a department store in Seoul. So from the beginning of 2003 to 2004. And here the idea was to make a building what is actually dealing with the idea that it's not purely a commercial project. So we argued here with the client that it would be so nice if the department store could be seen as a museum, as a cultural place where people meet. Like in for instance, especially in Asia, you know that, is that so many people enjoy to come in the evening and to see each other so that they have a fantastic time together and that they can move around in the building and then maybe do a lot of eye shopping. If they shop, yeah, that will be fine. But I mean, eye shopping is more important for some of the younger public coming to these buildings. But I was also in a way in that time referring a lot to the work of Andy Warhol, because Andy Warhol made once a funny joke or statement, and he said that if we all would die, we would end up in Bloomingdale's. And that Bloomingdale's is one of the most important stores, you know, in America. But I mean, he had this idea that a department store would be somewhere to be seen as a place where it could be like heaven. And it is made in heaven effect is what we were after. On the other hand, we were after the idea that we didn't want to combine all the brands and the lights on the facade of the building. We thought more about a pointillist approach to the facade, whereby all the different parties would be part of this lamp of the building in the city, so that it would generate a continuous light chains within the context of Manhattan, so that it would become more like an artwork. So here we flirt a lot with works here, and we believe that it is essential to give the program a twist, so that you don't really take the program so literally in the way how you then you design your project. So talking about the twist, that idea of the twist was used in the way how we turned, the way how we looked at information, how we documented information. But in the same time, we twisted the ideas around the program. We twisted actually literally, as you can see here. This is a physical twist within the Mercedes-Benz museum, where 2 floors or even 3 floors are holding each other together in the way how then the vertical shafts are carrying also the spans of almost 33 meters of a floor what is hanging in between. Also, this twist was simply necessary because if we would not have done it, then you could really not move from one floor to the next floor or the next plateau into the building. So it's not only a physical constructive element, but it is also an opening element towards the vista of the building. So, I mean, this was before the end of the opening of the project, so this is in a construction phase. And people can stand here, they can stand there, and they can stand there, they can stand there. So you have constantly these kaleidoscopic views when you're in the building. And of course, then that was maybe something else what we've learned, that these projects and these ideas, these bigger details within the building. So I don't talk anymore about small details. I'd like to talk also about the bigger details lately. Then were tested one-to-one. And then tested so that you would really see how it was possible to make it so smooth as possible and so elegant as possible in a way how this twist moves you through the building. So this is the section. I mean, you know it, but I'm going briefly through it. It is an organization of two helixing spirals crossing each other. And you start at the top, so you take an elevator, you go to the top, and then you move slowly down. And the idea is that you sometimes have a more internal exhibition space and sometimes more an external exhibition space. So these are more having views to the outside and these more to the inside. And as you can see, the whole idea of the integral quality of the floor, holded by the twist, is carrying the other floor, picking up in this layer again, and then is carrying again the next floor. So this idea of the continuous surface as an integral spatial organization, whereby almost the program, the infrastructure, the whole way of how the installations, maybe you could say also here the program, are all integrated into one hybrid, seamless organization. But as we know in architecture today, that it is not so interesting anymore to make complex forms. As I said, it's not a form. It is the way how you discipline the organizational qualities of the way how you bring the building together. So like here you see the twist coming 4 times back in the organization, and the way how we did that was to be fast and to be quick on the one hand, because we had only 1 year to build this project, but also to simply make the building constructively very tight in the way how we brought it together. So also for the casting techniques, we used similar materials to use the same method for the way how we then could speed up the project. So here you see again the internal view exhibitions like this, and these are the external views. So this is one spiral, and this is the other spiral. And here you see the mathematical principle of the way how these twists are coming together. This is actually what we call a trifold organization in mathematical principles, but the surfaces are called ciphered surfaces, and these ciphered surfaces are interesting to work with because they absorb an enormous amount of architectural qualities. So like I said, they can absorb the construction, they can absorb the way how you can direct the surface. So they talk in mathematics about orientable and non-orientable principles in these qualities of the way how this surface can guide you in the building. One of the most important aspects is that when we designed this project in 2005, was that already in Germany there was an incredible intense belief of the way how we had to think about the sustainable, or what we like to call the attainable aspects of the building. This is a smoke detector, so if there is a fire in the building, then this smoke detector can suck out the smoke in almost close to 5 to 10 minutes out of the building. So that means that whenever you have a fire, you don't really have to have any compartmentalization within the building, but you can suck the smoke out of the building in a tornado-like way, because it twists itself up the building and then it sucks itself out of the building. So this is a real technological intervention in the way how we could make the building as open as possible. And the advantages of this was that it could produce with that a building with 15% less materials. So we didn't have to do all the glass walls in the building for each floor. We didn't have to do all the compartmentalizations also between not only the exhibition spaces, but also between the utility spaces. So also with this we could introduce not only less space and materials also, but also we could with that reduce the cost. Because in the time when we worked on the Mercedes-Benz building, everyone was thinking that Mercedes had a lot of money, but they had a very critical budget. Another aspect is this concrete core activation, whereby you can heat up the building a few hours in the day, in the morning, or cool it down in another part of the day, for instance, the winters, whereby this could generate an enormous amount of energy reduction within the building. So this is all about 2005, 2006 in Germany, where this was introduced in the project. And this is what we believe lately, that if you are interested in the sustainable, don't think about add-on sustainable ideas. It's not about the green roof. It's about the possible intelligence and the integral quality you can bring into the project, whereby the project as a total machine, like an abstract machine, can become what we'd like to lately call attainable. Well, this is the building site. You see how exciting. This is my favorite picture. And here you see now the project in its full finish. And it's really weird to walk around this building, because it's almost like if you walk in a time machine. You start with the history of the car, and then you walk down, and then it's like if you walk towards the future. But there are two helixes, so you don't know sometimes where other people are. So you think, oh gosh, why have I not been there? And why is that person up there, and I've not been there either? So you are in a kind of constant labyrinthian feeling when you are walking in this building. So that creates almost a contemporary spatial organizational quality, like we know today, that we can be in so many times at the same time. When you are on your phone or mailing your friend, we can be in so many times, and this building is representing that idea of that you can be many times in the same time. So it's not an Einsteinian time anymore where we believe in, when it comes down to the way how we, when we think about contemporary space. A lot of architects today like to talk about space, and we too, but it is so important to rethink the contemporary condition of space. If you compare it to the Gideon idea of space-time, where we all know about. So this is all that what I said about this building. Another aspect I'd like to add to this idea of the time machine principle is, of course, the museum idea. Again, here we had a client who didn't want to do simply a showroom. This was Professor Hubert, who was so enthusiastic about thinking that this building should be more than only a showroom, that it should be a place where you would really enjoy to be in a building, like he referred to the MoMA, where, let's say, the helicopter is hanging above you, where he said to me when he saw it for the first time, that it is so great that an industrial product can be an art piece. He believed that the car could be an art piece. Well, and in this house, similarly, we've been testing these ideas out. So sometimes ideas of the larger details move from one project to the other. And here also the whole idea of the transformative quality of the project comes together. Like you have an equal potential grid at the end of the house, and then slowly it turns into this softer geometry. So it transforms from the harder geometry towards the more softer geometry, and it becomes more a connection towards the landscape. Also, this part of the house where the infrastructure, you could say, of the house is introduced, people also can communicate with each other. Here, suddenly, the house becomes the place where people meet, where they can enjoy to see each other in the morning. When you come out of your sleeping room, or when you have been in, let's say, in the bathroom, or when you've been in the kitchen. So geometry and the way how we play with the organization of the house, in this case, or any project, I'm arguing, is not so much related to, again, the way how you shape it, but it's more how it generates activities, how it generates a particular kind of programmatic or personal or human, semi-private, semi-public qualities. So and maybe some of these ideas are then exported towards the outside, like for instance in this facade. This is, you could say, also an equal potential grid, and then slowly it moves and transforms towards a more articulated facade. This is in a laboratorium building in Groningen, whereby the color is guiding you from floor to floor, and each floor is having another color, so that you can have a wayfinding within the organization of the building. So the colors are referring to the way how you can find your laboratorium within this building. But as you can see, it opens itself up in the corner, so that sometimes when the building is playing with that green, it flirts with the green, although it's not green yet. I mean, we have to wait a bit until, but it can flirt a bit with the green in its surroundings. So this idea of the box turning into a blob, or kind of turning the articulated infrastructure towards the more harder, equal potential organization, is what we use in our work as a design model. It's a series of principles we work with. This is not the only design model. We have many of these ideas, many of these organizational ideas. But this has been used for many projects. Like, I mean, I showed you that in the house, but we have been also used it in a music theater in Graz, like where you have here the auditorium and here you have the aula, or in the Arnhem train station where you have here, let's say, the office building and the parking area underneath the building, and you have the train coming on this side here, 2 bus stations, a parking for the bicycles and parking for the cars, and then the taxis standing upstairs. So a lot of program combined in this infrastructural node. So this idea of that you don't go for a fixed stylistic reference, because I mean, you know that sometimes architects choose to go for this or either that, but we don't want to. We say, let's liberate architecture from its stylistic references. Let's liberate it because we are not believing in any kind of fixed geometrical organizational form. So let's think more about the transformative in the geometrical principles of forms where we can work with. Oh, and then that's too enthusiastic. And then you have these kind of different types of, like, this is the box to blob idea. Well, we have then sometimes worked with the idea of the mathematical models, like you know that from the Mercedes-Benz, but also from the Möbius house, or the way how we worked with the what we call the V-shafts, but they meander between the deep planning strategy, as I explained a bit in the beginning, so the way how we work with the way how we inform our projects, and in the same, I will come back to this, how we can be highly inclusive with these forms. So these are some more pictures of the house, and you can see here the house are connecting in the twisting area also to the landscape and the way how it moves with the landscape. And also how it pictures itself with the landscape in its mirroring effect, so that it creates these after images. We believe strongly in after images. We don't believe that a building should give you a bang in the face with one image. We believe that it is so much more nicer and more fascinating that you go away from the building and that you then suddenly discover, hey, there was something else I want to go back to, because you have an after image. So the house is so organized that you sometimes walk diagonally towards the landscape, and then sometimes also when you are standing inside, the landscape is also coming back in the inside organization as a reflective quality, not to be seen only on the outside, but also on the inside. So these ideas are now coming back much more in the latest work. Like, this is a project, I'm not going to fully explain it to you, but it is about a moray effect. It is a project in again, Korea. The house what you saw before is in upstate, or was in upstate New York. I'm not going to explain why. But the whole idea here of the double facade, what creates constant changing multiple effects, whereby it's almost like if the facade is having a plastic sculptural effect, is changing because of its moray effect. So there are two layers over each other, and then constantly it generates another graphical spatial organization. And you can see it here in detail. I mean, these are steel, aluminium profiles, and these are glass elements who are generating that double effect. It's very spectacular when you come into the building. It's almost like if you come into the project, you think first it is 4 floors, and then you think later, oh gosh, it's a building of 20 floors, but then if you count very slowly, then you discover there's only 10 floors. So this idea of the moray effect, what you see on the outside, is also to be found on the inside. So it's a graphic, not only graphic tool we work with, but also highly spatial organizational principle, what generates constant scale blurring. And this is our other belief. When we have worked with this idea of the transformative in architecture, so that you don't move from a fixed geometrical element towards a more kind of looser geometrical element, if you work with that idea of the transformative, what happens is that you then create a space what is far more intenser than, let's say, a space what is very 2.5 dimensional. This is not a space what is purely perspectival. It is a space what is kaleidoscopic and very kaleidoscopic and highly transformative, what I explained. It creates constantly this idea of the non-existence of the proper scale related to the many structures who come together. So, talking about scales, this is actually one of our largest scale projects in the studio, and this was actually one of our earlier largest scale projects we designed in the studio. We talk here about 1991, and already in 1991 we developed our own program for this project, like an own computer program, in order to make it possible to cut all the steel in such a way that we could make this plastique, this sculptural form. But the most important about this project is the history of this city and why we came to this idea of this form. The form came together in the relationship to the cranes referring towards the harbor and the robustness of the city. So we know that Rotterdam is a very industrial city. And this boldness we wanted to explain in the way how this bridge is carrying the north part of Rotterdam to the south part. Similarly, like in this project, this is a project in Hangzhou, it is in China. Maybe you know it's a very beautiful landscape city, whereby here we refer with the twist of the tower, on the one hand more to the urban aspect of the city, and then the building moves itself towards the top, towards the landscape views of the city. And this play we introduce, like maybe the bridge, with the way how the building refers back to the context and also to kind of meandering history, is something what we also introduce here with the bridge. So this bridge could not be a bridge to be found in Amsterdam, for instance. But talking about this project in Hangzhou, it's quite amazing today that these clients and these cities, especially in Asia, ask more for urban sustainability, like that everything could be activated within one place almost over the whole week. So you could stay in one location almost for a week, so that you don't have to use so much the infrastructure and so much energy for the city, so that people will create a little bit more liveliness on the location. A little bit what I said also about the way how Grand Central Station with all its program around is a place where people could stay. You don't have to travel. If you have a city within the city project, this is more or less a city. It's close to 500,000 square meters with offices, residents in here, hotel, the way how from shopping to cultural activities are all combined into one program. But today, talking about the new understanding of our profession, as I said, it is so important to think also about a form of quickness. And we don't want to promote commercial quickness, because we never liked quickness in a way how today clients saying to us, yeah, can you design this project for us in a year time, like with Mercedes? I mean, it was 1 year time, or 1.5 year time that we had to design it, and we could build it only in 1 year time as well. This project also needs to be built very fast, but what we have learned is that a certain form of concentrated quickness is highly fascinating. It's like how we make art today, maybe in a way. We don't paint any more paintings for 4 years like we did in the 16th century or the 15th century. We paint them a little bit faster. In architecture it's the same. We think we can become more bolder in the way how we design these projects. I mean, today with our programs, and I don't have to explain it, you know that maybe about our work, we can be so fast that we sometimes in the morning can do these type of variants where everything is checked, even sometimes the construction. So you check the program, the infrastructure, you check the internal organization, you check the urban landscape. The whole idea of this is not about 2 towers, it's all about one project whereby you make a cut, whereby it becomes an opening slot within the building. So it's more like a cave into the building and then test it out in all these different variants. And then of course, I mean, the whole idea of the sustainable open facade on the north side and then more closed down on the south side is then tested in this project. And I promise not to go into all the details where I'm a little bit I should be careful now because I'm going in too many details, but I mean, also the building is all about the construction and the shafts and the way how you have to staple all the programs on top of each other. And for that you need another column system than, let's say, a column system what is very linear. Like you have to understand, for housing you have another column system than for offices or for, let's say, a larger hotel program like an auditorium, etc. So that's why we came to a highly inclusive constructive system, a flexible system for this project. But there's also latest need of many clients of us, even public clients who say to us now, please don't make an office building anymore what cannot be turned into housing. It needs to be turned into housing. So from the large scale, I'd like to explain to the small scale. We sometimes, over the last years, do many pavilions also. They become a testing ground. They become, or maybe I'd like to say, they become our small paintings. We just do them very quickly in order to test spatial ideas of how, let's say, the idea of light can come into a room. This was a project, was an installation that was dealing with the idea of the holiday home. So we argued, and maybe that's also related to myself, you know, because I sometimes have this I need this form of escapism to go out a little bit. When you have quite an intensive life, then you like to be sometimes in another place. So you want to enjoy yourself a few weeks in the year where you can be coming to yourself and concentrate yourself and meditate on your ideas, like so many others always have done, from having a dasha or a holiday home where you can just enjoy your time. But my argument was, why can we not bring the holiday home? Why can we not bring the holiday home to our house? Why can we not bring the holiday home or the place to go out to ourselves? And this is all about that. This is a place where you can really enjoy yourself to be out. But these ideas have been tested in such a way that we quickly could manufacture it in a location outside Holland. I mean, we produced this all in Germany and then shipped it to America, where this installation was made in the Museum of Pennsylvania. But there are many things we learned from this pavilion. And I tell you that later also about some of the other pavilions. The way how we worked with our angles, how we repeated certain triangles in order to make sure that the project was able to be built in a very, not only affordable way, but also in a very handleable way. And this is later then used in a project like this music theater in Lelystad, and this is the theater. You come into this quite dark city. It's not a very nice town. It's called Lelystad simply because it's one of these satellite towns outside Amsterdam. And we gave it a lot of color, simply because all the buildings are so brown in the surroundings of Lelystad. And also we believed that we needed to research a topic where someone like Richters was so fascinated in. You know, the painter, the German painter. He said that when he went to Holland, let's say so 20 years ago back, then he said that the light was killed by the invention of the afsluitdijk in Holland. And I never believed that story. So I went to check it myself, and what was actually the case is that that beautiful Dutch light, as he called it, what you can find in the 17th century paintings, is still there. But he believed that it was not there anymore. So we believed that it was so nice to work with that idea that you can bring in color from outside the location, because the IJsselmeer is very close to Lelystad, that you could bring it to the city center and that you could really allow it to celebrate the idea that a theater could be a theater, to be seen to and to point at. So this is a theater with a foyer what is going up because the site is very tight. It goes vertically up. And you can see here that the whole idea of the kaleidoscopic on the outside, what represents a lot of the idea of the way how the theater is playing with the idea of the many facets of the reality of the theater, is also brought to the inside. And again, you can see that the idea of the equal potentialness of certain angles is coming back also in the acoustic qualities we wanted to introduce in the theater. And there are many things we introduced here. We made the theater very compact so that you could be very close to the stage. Like you have a little bit here, that it is very compact. And that also when you would sit up the balcony, that the acoustic quality of the walls are bringing the sounds very high up. So we did everything with these acoustic panels in here, you can see that here, to guide the sound in many ways. And you know, today again, they have wonderful programs for that. It's called auralizations, whereby you can test these ideas. But you have to see the building by the light, because you can see it here a little bit. So if the light is moving onto the building differently, then constantly it changes in color. So that was also another argument we made, that the building is constantly changing in color. So it's not absorbing one color. It's having two layers with a yellow, sometimes an orange quality, and then with the light it turns suddenly in another color. And this play with many realities of the outside of the building refers back to the many realities of the world of the theater inside the building. So this is another pavilion we did for the Venice Biennale a few years ago, with a similar constant interest of how we can change services and how we can direct them and build them in such a way that they can be equalized and be producible. And then with, of course, CNC cutting, with the latest techniques, can be so made that these surfaces can become very smooth. And then sometimes we use these ideas, similarly like this dance theater in St. Petersburg, in such a way that we have here around, I don't know how it is again, 17 panels, 17 different smaller panels, and then how they can generate again this facade that moves from the outside to the inside to create a continuous experience of going out when you are in the building. So when you're on the outside of the project, it invites you to come to this building with many phases, I'd like to say. But then when you're inside, you're still outside. Or you could say when you're outside, you're maybe also inside. And that is a play with maybe a latest pavilion we played with, like you maybe outside, but you're also inside. And this whole idea that the surface is not really a roof, but that it is also a column maybe, but that the idea of the rotated openings are creating these diagonal vistas in the city of Chicago, creates a condition whereby these pavilions are not buildings. That's what I'd like to argue. They are maybe similarly like the design models, they are prototypes. They're prototypes for ideas. Maybe comparable to the way how we used to work with houses before in architecture, whereby here the pavilion or the prototype, I could better say, turns into a series of ideas who can be transported towards the buildings. Well, you know this probably, it's the Millennium Square in Chicago, and maybe some of the reminiscences you can find in the reference to some of the work you can find in Chicago back into the roof and the tilted landscape. Also the production of this and the way how it is used in the night was very important for the way how we introduced this pavilion. This is the last pavilion we are working on. It's almost opening in Battery Park in New York, whereby the elements have been precasted and then shipped by car towards the location. And it was a very exciting experience, you can imagine, with going with a taxi and then following the elements going off the Brooklyn Bridge. And you can imagine that these two cars hold up all the traffic. You know, the whole city was in trouble because of these two guys. But that's what I like sometimes, you know, to be a little bit provocative. So this was then this idea of how the pavilions are key in their work, that they generate so much other work, that they produce constantly ideas around production, and maybe also a form of reversed engineering, so that we learn from the production, the materialization, and we bring it back to design. But what is nice about this image is that it is an exhibition in Harvard, a place where I teach right now, whereby with the opening of my position there, I had the exhibition, and you can see here, in the exhibition of the pavilions, you can walk into the image. Like I mean, it's like if the image is transported over the floor and stepping over the next floor, and then it's going over the next wall and then over the ceiling. So this idea of the what we call the parallax view, you know, that's something in the way how you view. I refer to that like in the idea of the way how you can be in a kaleidoscopic space, or that you can walk into after images. This idea of the spatial is, as I said, is key to the work. We believe that is the central principle in the way how we today can communicate differently in architecture. And this is the essence. I think that if you have no communication in architecture, then in a way you have no architecture. If we still keep on collaging with this column with the floor and the walls, if we still believe that this is the technique we have to work with, then we are sorry, but then we are a century behind. So we are today not collaging anymore. We can go beyond the collage. We can now combine in images, and this is in 1999 that this was already produced, this image. This was by the artist David Lee, where the man, the snake, and the lion are all combined in one image. But you cannot see the seams and the boundaries anymore, like in this phase. So today we can be much more integral. But we not promote the idea of the integral or the seamless alone. We are saying it is the transformative. It is from the way how you move from this principle of from the fragmented organization with the dispositioned parts into the more integral, like you can see in the painting of Bacon, whereby the nose turns into an ear and whereby the two are not maybe so visible anymore, towards the more integral. So it's more the transformative, again, what is so fascinating, what makes it possible today to make this, the knowledge with the way how you bring this information together, makes this so fascinating for architecture, as we say. Sorry for this primitive sketch, because I show all these beautiful renderings, but you know, I still sketch. And I should watch my time because I can talk endlessly. Yeah. So here we have a grid. But the grid, as I said, if you think about the profession, you know that here on this side, we had the idea of functionality in architecture. And on the other side, we had the aesthetics. That today, that is totally stretched up. So the whole idea of that you have today, functionality is not working. I mean, we work more with the utility of architecture, you could say, or principles of efficiency, you know, all the regulations of sustainability, construction, urban regulation. I mean, it expanded itself like crazy. We have now so many specialists within the profession. On the other hand, the aesthetic principle is also totally changed. Today, we can refer to film, we can refer to art, we can refer to industrial design, we can refer to many other aesthetical or cultural aspects, or writing even, in architecture. And what is the beauty of the profession, you could say? That we expanded it so much that we could really stretch it up. And I think we do that. We enjoy this the most in our profession lately. But what I'm saying is I want to get it out of the grid. I'm telling you, let's forget a little bit. Of course, I promote the grid because I talk about the box and I talk about the transformative, but let's for a minute think of that this line is something we can put in a circle, and that it is not so easy anymore to say where are the aesthetics, or where are the utility or the efficiency qualities to be found in the circle. I mean, before it was a little bit more clearer in architecture. Today, it's luckily enough becoming a little bit more diverse. But that doesn't mean that we are not dealing with these topics anymore. I mean, and I'm saying even let's twist it and bring it into other new types of organizations, like maybe we use this in a mathematical organization of the Mercedes-Benz Museum. So this idea of that we can transform is what I'd like to emphasize a little bit better in this project of the music theater in Graz, whereby the box turns into this blob, but the wall turns into a floor. It holds itself up, and that's the nice thing about also the Möbius structure, like we did in the Möbius house, where the mathematical model supports itself. And this is the entrance area, whereby you see that if you come in the music theater, and this is I have to explain this, sorry. This is a music theater for the University of Graz in Austria, and it's a very nice building, or a nice program, sorry. It's not so nice building actually. It's a building what is embracing the whole cultural life of the students who come to this building every day, and have to be educated to learn how to play music. And that sometimes they have to also be inspired by what it is, what they're doing. So what can they learn? And our argument was that it was important that this building would learn you something when you come into it. It is almost like if you go to the theater, then you can listen to music. But if you go here into the foyer space or the entrance area, then you can look at music. So that was the idea, that you would look in the space towards each other, and that you could see each other up there. You could see who enters the building, and then as a student how you come up. But what is the nice thing about this project also is that it's not the building that is nice, but I mean the way how it is used. It is actually also the public can use it certain moments of the month where there are performances given by the students. So then the public can come, and then then this whole building is suddenly very lively, and a lot of people from Graz coming to this theater. And then if you are a student, you don't have to only like a royal or an interesting public person, you don't have to walk over the red carpet alone, but you as a performer can also use the red carpet. But this project, what is carrying in the central area its floors in this, again, a twist-like organization. You can see here, this is the construction of that, is so built that it is not, that the concrete was not poured down, but the concrete was pushed up in order to make no gravel edges on the edges of the concrete. So again, here the production of the architecture, the production of the way how we brought this building together was one of the most interesting aspects of how this all came together. And it's very interesting that when you look up or down, sometimes you don't know if it is, if this is a floor or it is a ceiling, or if this is a next floor or is it a part of the ceiling. And here you see the music hall where the students do their performance. This one is a longer person. They have in Graz. There are very long people there. But the building is actually, in a way, having no facade. We argue a bit that it is just having an interior, this building. You have to come and listen to the music. You don't have to look at the building so much. You have to come and listen to the building in a way. If let's say, if you come slowly under an angle, it's like maybe this music box. It's something what you have to discover of the instrument inside the building. What is so exciting to be in, because you can actually not only, again, what I said, listen to music, but you can also look to music. So slowly this building also in the night reveals itself and it suddenly becomes transparent. So my argument is here that it is not so much that we have to think about, like in this art piece, the way how architecture can be seen as an autonomous element on its own, alone. What can be also interesting is that it travels over different places and how the ideas then over the moment when it travels from one idea to the next idea, that it then actually becomes far more intense and far more, you could say on the one hand reductive, but on the other hand also very nicely unfolding many ideas. It's like with a camera, this is an art piece in itself, but it can also produce another art piece. Or maybe like in architecture, we could say, this is a piece of an artwork what can produce constantly also another architecture, like we should think of in architecture. So this idea of the serial is key to the work. Sometimes we think that it is not so essential to only believe that it is the quality of architecture to build a masterpiece. I mean, this is what a heavy burden on many architects for so many centuries. We think that we should flirt a little bit more again with that what is happening in other fields. You know, there is serial music, there is serial art. But at the same time, I would like to say in architecture, we can produce a series of projects. And these series of projects, they as a group can say something about the way how we have developed something in the work, where still each work can have its own originality and its own quality and its own independence to its, the way how it is put into a context. But this is my this is my message to the students. You know, there is an incredible interesting future for you, because if it is so that we have to understand architecture today, then there is an enormous amount of things we can learn from the way how we can use all these contemporary techniques. And these contemporary techniques are not so much, like I said, so interesting to work with in order to make nice forms. But what is more interesting is the way how we can use it towards the way how we organize our projects, how they can generate more flexible ideas, that we can make column-free spaces and that they can be differently used, that we learn how to switch on and off external values towards the internal values of the project, like that we can regulate the project as architects. We have learned that when we are developing more or design techniques, we have learned that we can get a better concept of control over the project than we ever had before. Because in the 90s, we had no control over the project sometimes, because then a client was saying to us, can you design this facade for us in this afternoon, and then I pay you $20, you know, or, you know, I mean, that kind of attitude was there a lot to be found in the 80s and the 90s. Today, we can, with the new techniques and the new technological challenge, we can have much more control over the profession. I hope you understood that last part, because I didn't talk in the microphone. So the expanding of the profession, the whole idea of new techniques, the switching on and off, I think is so important. And the way how we share knowledge as architects, I think is extremely important. So I'd like to thank you. I hope there are some questions because I kept it very compact, but I leave that open to you. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup, Ben van Berkel. J'ai un micro à votre disposition, donc n'hésitez pas à faire signe si vous souhaitez poser une question, en anglais de préférence, sinon en français. Parmi les étudiants ou architectes, pardon?
Yeah, this guy. He wants
This
to say.
guy.
Yeah. You were shaved. I saw you there. Don't pull back.
Who?
You know what? I next time I point at people. Okay. You know, you have to ask a question.
No question. Yes.
Yeah, there.
So I try to ask the first question. What is interesting in your approach is, I think, for me, is how to put these images. They are very, for me, very hypothetic in a reality. So I mean in engineering. When I know the Museum of Stuttgart, and for me, is what is interesting for me is how you working with the engineers, because I think that is for me a crucial question about how to transfer these images in reality. And what is your, your team? Have you engineers in your own office, or have you some preferred engineers you're working together, or how you're functioning in reality for the museum in Stuttgart or the pavilions we have seen?
Yeah, it's interesting that you asked that, because as I start often with the bridge design. I didn't do that today, but or a lot of people know that I have been always very fascinated in infrastructure. So we like the infrastructural constructive side to our work a lot. So there is a lot of engineering there, but I don't talk about it so much, because maybe I think that sometimes I think that you can talk so much about the engineering that you then suddenly forget that there was another intention behind the project. But it's a very important question, because like the Mercedes-Benz Museum, it's interesting that you refer to that, because that is in a way one big tunnel. It's one big bridge. It's so infrastructural, so constructively well thought through that it could have not been done with just an engineer around the corner. So we here had, luckily enough, Werner Solbeck as an engineer to do all the engineering with us together, and he was so nicely also involved in the competition part of the project. So we try as hard as we can in the beginning phase of the project to get the engineers and all the other parties involved in order to make the stomach feelings we have about what is possible, because we have built more than 50 projects already. So the stomach feeling needs to be quickly translated towards a challenging idea, towards the engineering. But you know what I forgot to say is that talking about the change of the profession and the way how we have to re-understand the profession a little bit also, is that before we had only 5 people coming on the table from the client, or 3 or 2, you know that. And now there are sometimes with a little bit bigger projects, you know, even can be 10,000 square meters, then you have already, from the client side, also many specialists coming on the table. So today you have constantly, even when you set up a sketch, all these people who are involved in the process. So you have to think, that's what I didn't explain fully, but you have, for that reason you have to, from the beginning onwards, think immediately inclusively. That we didn't do that, let's say, 10 years ago. 10 years before, after the maybe sketch design or the preliminary design, we did some quick calculation of the column distances. We don't do that anymore. We really get the engineers and all the specialists very, very tight to the development of the project. So that's how we do it. That's the only way we think it is possible.
Il y a aussi un micro disponible en haut, hein, donc vous pouvez aussi poser des questions là-haut.
Alors, je crois que les personnes sont un peu intimidées et donc on te remercie beaucoup d'être venu ce soir. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Thank you.